transcending history and the world, a tale of souls and swords, eternally retold. Hello everyone, my name is Nick. Welcome to Rival Stage Gaming, and today we have two tournaments to talk about. That's right, two, not just one, two. And two is a great number. That means I'm getting it over my head, and I like that. One of these tournaments is just kind of an idea, something I've been kind of kicking around, and that's going to be kind of the big meat of the video here. But the other tournament is extremely real. It'll be coming up very soon, actually later on this month. We have the Webcam Warriors Third Strike this September 20th at 10 a.m. Pacific. It's a one-day event here. It's a standard format webcam event, and it's being hosted by Ace Maneuvers. It's a $15 entry fee to get yourself 5 rounds of Swiss. Do well enough, you'll get yourself into the top cut. And while Ace Maneuvers is presenting it, it's going to be hosted live by us here at Rival Stage Gaming. This is the first tournament I've organized in well over a year, I would say at this point, and the first webcam tournament I've ever hosted, if I'm not mistaken, which I'm pretty sure everything else I've ever planned I kind of, got lost on or whatever. But this is actually happening here. We're going to be streaming it live on YouTube, maybe update it to Twitch later on. But in the meantime, just going to be on YouTube right now. It's going to be a lot of fun. I look forward to it. We're going to have some cool people kind of hosting it, and we're kind of getting everything ball rolling for that right now. It means you need to sign up for it right away. The link will be in the description for that tournament, so make sure you sign up. Get into it right away. These tournaments that Ace Maneuvers do are a lot of fun, and I kind of want to see what everybody has going on. Special thanks to the sponsors of the event, Dark Open Series, the Undefeated at Locals, the Response on Play podcast, and Final Round Gaming. So now that we have the important stuff out of the way, let me ramble about this idea I have. It's another webcam tournament, but it's a proxy legal legacy tournament with a special ban and errata list curated by me. And it sounds a little scary, but stick with me. It's called Great Lakes Legacy. And what it really means to me is kind of why I'm even putting this tournament together here. This tournament is kind of in honor of all the awesome and friendly people and cool friends that I've met throughout the years playing this game. You got my buddy Omar Chavez. He is a Nationals champion in this game in the way back time, the Legacy format. And he won the Nationals event, and he had a really crazy deck. And it's one of the coolest decks I've seen function, and it kind of broke something in my game, my head fundamentally, that said, hey, you don't have to necessarily play this game the way you've been playing it and fit, kind of being like a middle of the pack player. You can start doing like a little bit of crazier things and really kind of understand it. And that was kind of like what inspired me to kind of take this up and kind of fall in love with the game conceptually. Back then, the feel of the game was real different. A lot of people who started this game, around like 2021, you won't really understand what the game was like specifically. Way back in the day of like Street Fighter, Soul Calibur 3, Penny Arcade, the first release, your card pool was very small, obviously, but the game kind of was a little bit backwards. Whereas these days, I feel like a lot of the best abilities are printed on the attacks. The best abilities were instead on the foundations, and that led to kind of situations where people were valuing having more foundations on board that did better and important things, as opposed to having attacks, that would interact with your opponent, so on and so forth. So really the game kind of went through like some real crazy stuff. As you go through the game, you'll look at cards, you'll see cards like Penetrating Lunge eventually got banned, like Reversal, always been a problem. Iori's Fireball Loop was like this crazy card that Matt Coles used, and it was just like, oh, okay, that's like nuts. You have things like kunai and chain throw; those came out like together at our instant loops. You had to have cards like to the bone banned because of characters who were printed. And chain throw was also a big reason for that. Eventually, we got to this very sickening, higher caliber response wars evil thing. We had to trudge through like Promo Alex and Feline Spike and Shallow Swipe. And then I remember when we really got really bad, we were like playing injury assets and we got the happy holidays, and we trudged through all the stuff, and it was a lot of fun. Like, don't get me wrong, I actually do get me wrong, it wasn't the most fun. The game is definitely a lot more fun than it ever was then, but that's because things were just conceptually a little bit different all the time. But Legacy, quote unquote, as a format, kind of had the best ending that you could ask for. With the release of Soul Calibur 4, we had 2 sets of that, and we had Tekken 6. And Tekken 6 was actually where I was brought on around that time it was released, or it wasn't released, it was designing it, working on it and stuff. That's where I was invited to come on to the playtest team, and I'll get into that a little bit later. But those particular sets, Quest of Souls after Tekken 6, those particular sets had so many good, like, memorable cards before the game had its hiatus, because there was a really good solid year, I would say, where Jason was trying to get the game up and running. He was trying to get support from people and really trying to sell the game more often, and it was a bit tough. But during that time, we kind of closed out with some amazing cards. We had things like your Nightbreaker combo. You had amazing foundations like Torn Hero, Ancient Fighting Style came out of those. Ivy with the switching weapon styles action that allowed you to play like 3 diff attacks and lower for no progressives. Tira had 2 actions that were attached to her, Jolly and Gloomy Side. Hilde, who should have been banned from like the actual Soul Calibur 4 game, was also a problem in universes, so who would have thought. And we also had a promo Cassandra, which was really good, not unlike the old promo Cassandra, who was it's pretty insane. I think she was a promo. But Tekken also delivered, which was super cool, the Mishima archetype. It was Kazuya, who could kind of completely reset the board over and over. Jin, who benefited from having multiple characters stacked. And Heihachi, who benefited from throwing away high difficulty cards, usually characters, for damage, which was a lot of fun. Those 3 particular characters had lots of really cool interaction. It was built off the chaos symbol, if I'm not mistaken. It was just phenomenal. And then you had also like some real bangers on that set. You had King, you had Nina, you had Steve Fox as a promo, you had Brian Fury's for a promo, who was just absurd amount of damage. You did have like the problem card, which was kind of a distribution fault there a little bit, but it was called Paid to Protect. It was reprinted on later on in retro, but it was a huge problem because nobody had any copies of it. And then the final Quest for Souls release had a lot of cool stuff, and it had this really aggressive combo-based Mitsurugi. It also had this fun Taki character, who I don't think she was very, like, I'm not going to say she's like super competitive or anything, but I would say she was the messenger for face down cards. She was kind of like, hey, this is how face down foundations are going to work, because we really hadn't seen them up until that point, and her entire kit, for the most part, was built around that. So that's kind of like a little history lesson right there. We also had Zhanghua. I remember my friend Iari Melkor playing that at one of the last nationals I attended. It was glass cannon defined. It was just so explosive, and it did so much damage, but it had 0 in the tank if you were able to weather the storm. We had a 4-check Amy. I used to call her 4-check Amy because was one of the first times it was like check against the difficulty of 4, It was like kind of on a character, and that was a lot of fun because it said give speed equal to block modifiers. So at the time, block modifiers weren't exactly great on attacks, so you kind of got a ton of speed. And with Tekken, I was kind of bummed we didn't get a Yoshimitsu, and it's kind of not the same thing, but we did get a Yoshimitsu in Quest for Souls, so you could play a Yoshimitsu against your Kings, your Ninas, your Pauls, your Kazuya's and stuff, and still kind of have that interaction, even though it wasn't the same thing. But Legacy definitely, kind of had its ups and downs, but for the most part, it had a very nice and fulfilling end cap. So I'm talking about a format for this tournament, right? And when I'm making this, it's really hard. I'm kind of pulled in a couple different directions. I want the format to represent Legacy UFS as it was at the top level, just kind of without the toxicity. I want the good stuff to still remain good, and the really good stuff to remain really good. I just want the broken and kind of bad stuff to be brought down a level. And on the other hand, I want all the stuff that's below all of that stuff, I want it pushed up so that it's stronger, but nothing is necessarily pushed above what the original really, really good stuff was. And maybe naturally, the format was just a couple cards away from it being extremely balanced, but there's two very important things to me. The other two things were, I want players to be able to play the cards whenever possible, while at the same time I want to make sure that we've removed, we don't have, or we've addressed any cards that could create what we like to call a negative play experience environment. And those kind of cards are it was cool, maybe it's what we had back in the day, but I definitely don't want this to be sort of a thing where it's a bunch of old heads punching downward on a bunch of new people trying to get into the game and have fun. That's not what this is about. If that's what you're looking for, I please suggest maybe just enjoy the game for once. So I've looked kind of everywhere for the most part, and maybe I've overlooked a couple things here. I almost guarantee I haven't done all the research I've needed to do so far, but we're working on it. But I've been trying to find the last official ban list and tournament rules that focused on Legacy as a format specifically. And then after finding what I did find, I tried to identify what I consider to be the problem cards that weren't really banned or errated, or cards that were banned or errated, but they really didn't need it. They just kind of needed a simple change, or they were a product of their environment, where it's this card was banned because all these other cards existed, but if I change and modify this group now, suddenly things work a little bit better. Most of the cards on the whole complete list and everything I put together, unfortunately, they're just things that can't be fixed. They're just bad cards that shouldn't have been printed. That original promo Cassandra I was talking about, there's no way to fix that. Defender of the Empire, no way to fix that. Concealed Shallow Swipe, there's probably a way to fix that, but I'm not going to look for it right now. There's no need to. And there were a bunch of cards that could be fixed very easily just by making them unique or character only. For example, the card I referenced earlier, Chain Throw, that card is now Cody only. And there's some pretty good Codys in the format, namely Stacker Cody, who can load up 7 copies of him in the deck, and then play this card as well too, which is kind of absurd. And the card Darkness Plane, which is an extremely strong card and was banned, but we can kind of bring that back into the realm of things with who can get away with that ability just by making it Morgan and Lilith only. If this still continues to be a problem, then obviously the cards can go back away, but these are just kind of the steps I took to allow these cards to still continue to be playable to people while creating options for other characters who didn't normally have them. Some examples of things become unique are Addis Syndicate, Fortune Teller, and the Gorgeous Team. These are extremely strong cards that were kind of problems. Addis Syndicate, obviously, if you're an old head like myself, you know that card was a huge issue, and they gave it an errata to try and fix it, but there's no errata needed here. The card is fine as long as you only have one. A card like Fortune Teller was not errata, was not banned or not changed or anything like that, but it's something where if you're kind of a newer player stepping into this format and you encounter 4 of these, it could be, your day could be done right there on that turn. So you just kind of have to be aware, you know, of these kind of cards. So that's why that one got that. Gorgeous Team is a fantastic card, and it's kind of a bummer. It is so strong and just so absurd in multiple copies. So if we make it unique, at the very least, we're kind of slowing it down to some degree. Now, even after all of these changes, that still left me with 2 problems. The first problem was, as a whole, it was action cards. The second problem was just single card, and that card is Yoga Mastery. Yoga Mastery just like isn't a strong UFS card. It was the game-defining card until its rotation. And even after that, when Legacy was still kind of in its infancy because there were only 2 formats, it was the flagship. Like, there was nothing really better than it. You would oftentimes see anybody in Legacy, they would play a deck, and if they were like, oh, well, I'm a water deck, but a lot of my attacks have Void on them. Well, I'm going to splash Void, do the same symbol chaining, just so I have access to Yoga Mastery. It was that good of a card. You almost ran it as a 3 of at minimum if you were able to, you know, play on symbols. So it's incredibly strong, and it has been changed before, but I don't think that the change that was made to it was kind of enough, and I think it's honestly a little bit needlessly complicated, but I understand wanting to, you know, try to address it in the best ways possible to allow people to continue to play it. So in my format, the only card I am functionally changing twice is going to be Yoga Mastery. It is now Dulcim only, and it is now unique. And so the justification behind this is, first off, Dulcim 3 is already banned in the format because Dulcim 3 is strong and was banned officially by UFS, you know, overseers back in the day. Dulcim 1 is probably the next best Dulcim character you can play in the game, and so that would probably be next in line if Yoga Mastery is still kind of dominating the thing. And also, if you make it unique, suddenly there's only 1 copy of the stage. That's a lot easier to deal with than opposed to dealing with like 2 or 3, because you will still, like, if there's only 1 in the stage, you still will have to pack answers. Foundation Destruction at form speed or response speed, obviously, is your best bet, but you don't have to pack so much because you feel like you're going to have to clear through so many of them. So I wanted to make sure that Yoga Mastery has its representation. There's good Dulcim characters that can play it, and also at the same time not make, you know, basically if it's unique, you obviously would want to run 4. Maybe you'd run like 3, you know, just doing what I can to try and help make a little variance in the game. But actions, with that out of the way, actions create a whole different issue. Certain actions in old Legacy UFS represent the true power of the game, and it is really important to include those whenever possible. The problem is, a lot of these action cards that have been banned or that were problems that weren't addressed with, we can't easily solve them like we could with foundations and assets. Well, I guess we kind of could, because if you look at the Yu Yu Hakusho set released by Jasco Games, the very first one, there's a card in there called Spell Circle. And Spell Circle has the exact written text: you can only have 1 copy of this card in your deck. So if you take a look at that sentence and you apply it to like twisted logic hard enough, you can kind of say that that card is a unique action. And with that idea in my head, and, you know, like, once again, we're kind of twisting a little bit of logic here, I figured we can just make that kind of a keyword one that's like applicable in deck building only. So unique action can kind of become a keyword trait, and the text simply would read as it does on Spell Circle for all intents and purposes. If this does create a rule issue somewhere, which I am almost 100% sure it does, and that's super cool, please let me know right away so I can try to figure out the verbiage to fix it. But I really think that this is a good way to address this, because it allows you to still have these awesome action cards in your deck while not necessarily being able to rely on them for your game plan. So like, bear with me here, okay? So cards: Happy Holidays, the Injury Assets, Bleeding Eternally, Broken Leg, and Rejection. These are all insanely strong cards that were all banned. But Happy Holidays just says stop your opponent from being stop the game, basically attack-wise, for one cycle of turns. So if you're playing that over and over and over, then it can become a problem. But if you just play one of it, it's really not too big of a deal. You know, it kind of throws a hiccup out there. Bleeding Eternally and Broken Leg, these are injury assets. These are action cards that reduce the damage of an attack to 0, and then the assets build themselves into your stage, and they basically have downside abilities. If you're able to play all of these and basically say, hey, I'm going to let you attack me as much as you want, eat all the damage with these things, and then on my turn somehow destroy these so you don't actually get access to them, it kind of creates a situation where somebody doesn't have to play any defense. But now if they only have one of these, they're able to, you know, survive a little bit, but they also have to then deal with the asset and still play an honest defense afterwards. And then there's that card Rejection that I mentioned. That card is so good. Oh, it's insane. But it is insanely strong. It is insane for all the wrong reasons. However, it's not game breaking. Being able to play these types of abilities are good, and I feel like they should have at least the one-shot ability of them over other things. Another thing that Unique Action can do here is allow me to bring back a card that is a little absurd. It's a card called Replenishment, and we're going to have Replenishment be legal in this format and not Revitalize. And the argument behind that is that Revitalize allows you to get cards as well too, and it has a block, which means kind of overall it's a much safer ability. Whereas Replenishment has no block, does not draw you any cards, and just says both players are returned to printed. So by having that as Unique Action, it does kind of buy you a little bit more time, but with that being said, Replenishment, it just might go to. So if it does end up being a problem, it does have the all symbol on it. So, and finally, like one of these other Unique Actions is You Will Not Escape. Now this card had no changes to it at all whatsoever, no ban, no errata or anything. However, I think it's a card that helps encourage something we call Grave Wars, which is where people focus on building their stages as opposed to attacking out. And I think this is kind of like Offender number 1. In a perfect world, I think I would ban it right away. However, this is a thing where I want people to be able to play the cards. So I think having it as a Unique Action kind of gives somebody a quick buyout if they need to, without necessarily being able to rely on it as a complete game plan in the deck for defense. Before we get any further, let's take a little sidetrack here and talk about formats. So formats right now are obviously the kind of the guidelines for how people play the game, but they're in a state of like whatever UVS Games wants them to be, or whatever company at the time was supporting them. Currently, like the recording of this video, UVS Games supports a standard format and kind of supports their Spotlight formats. Spotlight, I don't know if it's an issue of not being popular enough or not having enough support. It's a chicken or the egg type situation, but it's very clear that like standard is here, Spotlight is here. After that, we have, going a little older, we have retro. Now we have regular retro, and that's handled by UVS Games, but they kind of let the people at Rochester CCG run their Rochester retro format and kind of oversee that instead, which I think that's kind of a good way to do it, especially when there's so many people at Rochester CCG who have a good understanding of the format as a whole and kind of can come together and make healthy decisions. And I think that's super cool. That's kind of a little bit of an inspiration for me to be doing this right now. So thank you guys. Older than all of that, however, it's like an old Wild West ghost town, and there's not really been much talk about anything. For the most part, it's been pretty much just tumbleweeds. So that's why I'm kind of use this video to say I'm the new sheriff in town for when it comes to Legacy. And this is kind of the revival of it, hopefully. And I kind of have a good little badge to show everyone, but it's not a badge. It's actually this Google Sheet, which kind of helps explain how my brain looks as formats. So overall, the game kind of has 3 eras, what I would say. You have the Sabertooth Games and Fantasy Flight Games era, and that's the era I'm from. I started collecting pretty much after just before the Dark Path came out. That's when I really started collecting a lot of the cards here. Then you have yourself the Jasco Games era, and I was actually kind of doing playtest and other kind of stuff, design work and things like that, up all the way until King of Fighters 13 came out, and then I demoed for Mega Man, and I was like, boom, out of there. And then when I came back, I think that's when we were kind of at the start of what a lot of people are calling the UVS Games era, and that does obviously bleed backwards into the My Hero 1, even though I don't think that was released under UVS Games, but it kind of goes back to that when the game was sort of relaunched without reversals and multiples and so on and so forth. So if I can use terms here now, if I can grab some terms from UVS Games here, I think we can have a spotlight format just for certain eras of the game. And it's a little bit difficult to kind of focus in on what these specific eras would be, but I would want to put this out here. I think the Sabertooth Games and Fantasy Flight Games lifespan of the game works well as for the basis of what we call the legacy kind of card pool. And then obviously Jasco Games Red Horizon 1 onward, I think that works really well for what we would call the retro format card pool. And then UVS Games, obviously they kind of have nice little 2 options here. They have the standard formats, and then they also have the ability to launch a My Hero Academia 1 onward format that doesn't necessarily reach back into retro too far, and then also kind of gives another format to incentivize people to keep playing if they kind of picked up the game around 2021. I really hope they do that, honestly. If they do so, I want to put my hat in the ring here and say they should call it a replay. That's keeping in the name with retro, and I think that sounds very nice. One other thing that is kind of something that needs to be addressed is you can see that there's some different rule sets. The big pillar changes to these things are mulligans, attacking on turn 1, symbol chaining, and most recently the changing of the unique rule. And I try to divide these up into categories that make sense here. You have your UVS rules here, you have your UFS rules here, and then what I have to call the UFS plus rules, which is kind of a mix of the old style UFS rule set with some more modern changes, simply that make gameplay a little bit easier. I am almost 100% positive I am overlooking something, as this is the first draft of all of this stuff. But it is important to me, for if you're playing with these old cards, to keep things like symbol chaining and attacking on turn 1, because this isn't an issue. This isn't a thing where it's like the cards were definitely like designed with all of this in mind. There's cards like Leaping Commando Kick, like it's a 2 difficulty attack, I believe, or no, not Leaping Commando Kick. There's a different kick. I'm gonna put it up on the screen right now. Nah, I probably let's fade to it. This card, like, come on now, like you're gonna play that definitely on turn 1 after you played out a couple foundations. So there is obviously a need to kind of stick to these old rules, but like the bad rules were like, the bad things about it were like bad. Like mulligans were terrible. I think the new mulligan is way better because you used to have to remove your entire hand from the game, and so if you had a bunch of attacks, you're like, oh cool, a bunch of my kill cards are just like gone now, and that's terrible. And then the unique actually is like, while I was planning all of this, unique changed, and this is like kind of a bigger wrench in the gears. I don't know if it's an important gear that's getting stopped right now, but it's there. And I do like the change to unique because I think unique could use that power capping ability a little bit more, where it's no longer just, oh, I'll just destroy the committed one. Now it's, oh, I gotta at least try to clear that before I play another one. So I think those are pretty cool, and that's kind of why I would prefer to play things or this event, you know, or this format with this UFS Plus rules, because it doesn't really change the flow of the game too much, and it does encourage people, the unique rule at least, and the mulligan rule and stuff like that, and the symbol chaining. And hopefully it encourages people to kind of build a little bit differently, not just kind of fall into the same grooves of what looks good, what looks strong. I also just want to point out, you know, just kind of theory crafting this, we do have the opportunity to have a format called like something like Universal or whatever, where we go back to like the very super early sets of like Penny Arcade, and we go all the way up to current set, but there's like no ban list, and it's just functional erratas only. Like, I think there's like some real absurdity there, and I want like nothing to do with it, but I think it would be pretty crazy to see like how dominant Void or Evil is compared to a bunch of other stuff. Or maybe everybody just gets turned 1 by some insanity off water, so who knows. But the other idea is, like, if you look at like this license thing, I have an idea here, right? And this is once again the same card pool, like the huge card pool here, but you can only use things from that certain license, and it's kind of like an umbrella for that license. So like, if you're a Street Fighter player, right, if like Ryu is your guy, think about like how many versions of Ryu have been printed, how much Ryu support is out there, how many Ryu cards. Same with like Chun-Li, you know, like Ryu and Chun-Li, if you made a format that was just Street Fighter cards alone, just Street Fighter cards, Chun-Li and Ryu would be like half of that card pool because of how popular they are. But you would get to see like the ups and downs of design and how the characters kind of move and shake, and how maybe previous versions influenced newer versions, and how, you know, like what do the newer versions pull from the old ones, and, you know, what hit, what missed, and what didn't work. And yeah, it's just, I think that would be super cool to see there. But yeah, that's how formats are, I think, to me in my brain. So I don't know, I think it's pretty cool. Let's get back on track, because that's all just a roundabout way to say that I like focusing on that Legacy Spotlight formula, because Legacy is super cool, but that involves all of Retro, and like I said, I didn't really play all of Retro. A lot of the good stuff that people really like was after my time, so I don't necessarily know all that, and then coming back with my hero definitely kind of creates this dead zone of knowledge for me that I'm not too keen on. So I do really like the Legacy Spotlight formula, and I really like it to the point where I want to get other people interested in it. So this would be the second tournament we were talking about earlier, completely separate. Okay, that one is like a real tournament. That tournament is Webcam Warriors Third Strike, September 20th at 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. It's a one-day event, $15. Standard format webcam event taking place in the Ace Maneuvers Discord, and it's 5 rounds of Swiss, hosted by us here at Rival Stage Gaming. Thank you to Stark Dark Open Series, Undefeated at Locals, Responsive Play Podcast, and Final Round Gaming. Not that tournament. That tournament is real. It is happening. I hope you were paying attention. This one, as it stands right now, is a little bit more unprofessional, if you will. This is probably the no graphics required at this time Midwest Coast Legacy Webcam Open. Maybe we'll throw a Grand Prix at the end of it. For those of you who are unaware, which I think a lot of you would be here, in 2008 and 2009, I was actually the tournament organizer for a tournament series called the Midwest Coast Championships here in Wisconsin. The idea behind it is that at the time, we didn't really have like the organized play schedule that we currently have right now. I cannot tell you, like, I could gush about that forever right now. But back in the day, it was kind of all just real community driven, and if you were willing to put in the work, the company would support you, but they really weren't going to do too much outside of whatever events were happening at Origins Game Fair and Gen Con. That was about it. So they would have a West Coast Championship, East Coast Championship, I think a Gulf Coast Championship popped up. And at that point, I was like, well, you know, if the Gulf Coast gets to be a coast, you know, and it's not even a real coast, let's be honest here. If they get to be a coast, why can't we be a coast? We're defending our coast from Canada, you know, so we started the Midwest Coast Championship. And this, I kid you not, this ended up being the very first tournament that I ended up ever hosting and like organizing as a competitive event. And it ended up bringing in like over 60 people, just an absurd amount of people. I got to meet a lot of people for the first time. I got to meet everybody. All those people that I mentioned earlier at the top of the show, that's where I met a lot of these people, like just right up there, including, and those people I mentioned, like I said, are just from the Great Lakes, like who are adjacent, you know? That's not including the people on the West Coast, the people in Atlanta, the people in Las Vegas, just people everywhere. You know, and this is like a big thing for it. This is how I met a lot of these people. And this tournament, I think, is a great way to pay homage to all of them for, you know, supporting me and kind of like pushing me to be the person I am today. And, you know, just kind of being friendly and nice and stuff. So, yeah, that's kind of why I want to do this here. The other thing that's cool about this, or why I want to name it this, the other thing that's cool about this name is these particular events. Like I said, I joined playtest, and I was on design for a little bit as well too in the early Jasco days. It was because of these events, because I was like, hey, I'm gonna do this, and I had to make some important judge calls, and we ended up getting a judge. Yeah, it was craziness. I could talk about that, whatever. But these were some really fun times, and they kind of helped me lead to bigger and better things. And it's really nice to kind of dust off those memories and have some fun thinking about that. So, yeah, it's one thing that kind of just comes to mind. Another thing is that back in the day of like Legacy and during the Midwest Coast Championships, is that this, you know, it was an in-person event because we didn't really have a lot of webcam games going on. Webcams were still very bad quality-wise and stuff. It was very hard to make out a game. I think there was a PlayStation 2 game that came out at the time that kind of like delved into using a webcam to play a card game, but aside from that, it really like was not possible. But now we have Discord, and like Discord is incredible for being able to do stuff like this, because we can now run a tournament with everybody having like a decent quality webcam, and yeah, you don't need to really do anything. You don't have to travel anywhere. You can just play from the comfort of your own desk or living room or so on and so forth. So that's why we're going to do it with a webcam, because webcams are fun. And that does mean you'll need physical cards, and that if you're like me, you're like AARP eligible at this point, but you definitely don't have any of these cards. That's what it comes down to here. So it would be very insane of me to not allow proxies in a tournament like this, because proxies are the solution basically to getting people to play this without having a terrible investment cost for it. And distribution issues, like I said earlier, were kind of problematic. Happy Holidays is a card that, you'll be legal, as of now, is legal as a one-off, but those were just like pre-release promos, I believe, or just like a thank you card to scouts. And so it's like, if, my store was lucky enough to give me 2 whole packs of them as a thank you, and I was like, I gave a bunch out to my players and stuff, but I still have a bunch of these. A bunch of people will not, and that's just stupid. So yeah, let's go ahead and allow proxies. Now there are going to be some rules on proxies. They got to be like full color at the very least. You can't be showing up in black and white. Let's try to showcase and have some fun, but full color proxies, they are completely legal. The goal is for people to play the game, not for people to showcase their collection. And I'm somebody who wants to showcase their collection, so I do kind of like feel for those people. So I was thinking about maybe having like a bonus prize or something for whoever has like the deck that's the most complete with 0 proxies in it. Like that way, whoever finishes the highest with that gets a bonus or whatever. There'll be something I could do for them just to, really make it work. And really, that we kind of start zipping things up here. Well, if we kind of get to that point, right? We have the webcam event. We have proxies allowed. We're going to slightly alter the classic UFS rules, but I'm still going to need a judge. Maybe, we'll see here. I'm still definitely need prize support, and I still need to set a date. So if you do want to judge, let me know. We can try work something out. I'm Nick Marvelous on Discord, or you can leave a comment here below. I'll try to get a hold of you. If you do want to sponsor this event, which, hey, I'm your man. I got all the advertising you could possibly want. Please let me know. Don't hesitate to contact, because I do kind of have like some balls rolling. I do kind of have some good ideas. I want to make sure that we're catering to like kind of everybody, not just like new UFS players or old UFS players and new Universes players. I want to make sure that we're kind of, making sure everybody's happy with surprise support here. And then for the date, I honestly don't know how many people are going to be interested in this thing. So I'm going to say let's aim for like early November for this thing. But I don't want to finalize it, because I really need the most important thing that any tournament organizer could ask for, and that's feedback. I can't tell you enough how much feedback is like important to me for these types of things, like especially when we're talking about something that has a bunch of like gameplay nuance to it, like adjustments and things like that, because I know there's going to be 3 sides to this coin, right? You're going to have the group that like loves this, and regardless of the rules, they just want to play with their old cards again. This event, this is for you guys, and I know you're just here to have some fun and enjoy the stuff. This is why I'm doing it. There's the other group, right? And this group is gonna hate that I've destroyed their precious little format that was extremely unpopular, that led to gray wars and stagnation of the player base, the reason the game couldn't grow. There's gonna be this community that hates whatever I'm doing, and odds more often than not, this is the community also that's going to be super toxic and just wanted to play, like a whole bunch of just like the worst things possible and beat up on a bunch of new players. Like I didn't really want you like playing at this anyways. So if you have some criticisms, let me know. But otherwise, like if you're here, this definitely isn't for you. But a lot of people, okay, they're gonna fall right here, and this is the kind of I'm unsure about this thing as a whole, and like I get it, it's a whole different like scope, and looking at this game using a card pool you don't like really know. It is about like 3,400 cards, and like yeah, there's a bunch of comprehensive like bands and errata, and like I get it. Like if you started with like Mega Man or in retro or like My Hero Academia, like it's a bunch of stuff to bring in here, but like please just remember the game still works the same. And with the changes that I've made, I'm hoping that the field is kind of wide open for every symbol. We, traditionally had some very dominant symbols of like void, death, evil, basically anything that wasn't an element. Well, except water. But hopefully this allows other kind of symbols to really stand out and be much stronger than they were before. If the community at large is like unsure about this, I have no problems making like supplemental guides or lists or videos asking questions or anything like that, because I really want to make sure people aren't just like, oh, I like this character and it sucks and like whatever, so on and so forth. And then also like I said, the price support for this thing, it's really going to be tried to gear towards like something that works for everyone. My idea is some of the newer stuff with maybe it's like some older gems or like some history stuff like thrown in there. It might be like individual single cards. Like I don't know, it might be stuff for my collection. Who knows? We'll see what I can do there for you. But the idea is that everybody who like is interested in this and wants to play in this tournament, they get more bang for your buck. And the buck here, ideally, is like 0 or as close to 0 as I can get. See, like, these things do take a lot of planning and like a lot of effort and a lot of stuff. Like, you would not believe like how much I've thought about like individual cards. Like the card Cold and Indifferent, I've thought about that card for like way more than anybody should have thought about that card in the last decade. Why? But it does take like a little bit of like effort. It does take planning and stuff, and hosting this and then streaming and all sorts of things like that. It would be really easy to just be like, $10, like $10. I get some money in my pocket. We just kind of go off from there or whatever. It's really easy to do that here, but I don't really want to. So I'm going to make it even easier, and I'm going to start with 0, and then we're just going to have a player cap of like 8. And if we get like more to the point where I have to like bring on a judge, because like with 8 people, I can judge that myself while broadcasting it. That's not a problem at all. But if we get more than that, we'd have to get another judge, and then like that judge has to be paid for because that's how things work. So then maybe there would be a fee. And as we get like, if we get like more than 32, and I'm starting to like attract like big sponsors or something or whatever, something happens like crazy, we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. But ideally, like it's a proxy tournament, and if the prizes get big enough, I could see it going up. But for the meantime, we're starting at 0 with no plans currently at this time to go higher than 5, unless everybody really likes this. And I hope everybody does. Maybe you guys will hate this and this ends up being an 8-person nothing. But this kind of like even this like 0 and all this other stuff talk about this all just really like, it's all very just a long convoluted way for me to say like, I just want you like to play and at least give it a shot. If you like UFS or Universes, if you like any aspect of those whatsoever, like please give Legacy Spotlight a chance, because it is like super cool as a concept, and it's a great way to take a look at like what the game was. When you get Moonbeam Slicer for like 1,000, like you're like, all right, this was kind of cool, I understand it now, and if you're like, yeah, I don't know, I want people to play. And if you're like on the outside looking at this right now, you're unsure, please like give me some feedback about this, about what is making you unsure about this. Is it like time commitment? That's obviously tough. Like if it's a big webcam tournament, you won't be able to make or so and so forth. But if it's you're uncertain about certain cards, or you don't like this, or you don't like that aspect, or whatever, feel free to reach out with me, talk with me, because I do kind of like want to hear from that. I just don't want people to like really forget about the old game that I grew up with, because this game has kind of given me a reason to travel. And when I do end up traveling, I end up traveling to places where I've always had friends. And I've always had people I can hang out with. And these people are like just people I've met through UFS. And this game is like, that's still the same game that I play today. There may have been some breaks, and there may have been some ups and downs with how much I was like committed to being able to play the game as a player all the time. But like, this is still the game. And like, I think we're in a weird spot right now, and I think it's a good spot. I think it's one of the best spots the game's ever been in right now, but I do think it's a bit weird. And I just want to remind everybody that like the playable game that we have with like an organized play team and broadcasts and prize pools, all stuff like that, the fruits of that game that we're eating right now, those roots, like those go all the way back to these old weird cards that weren't. It was like the fifth most popular game, at best any given day, And I feel like if we can look back at the game, we can have a better understanding of what we want the game to be as players. Like, what are the good things that were always good hits? What did we really like about the game? Deck building, what did we like about the game? Drafting, what did we like about the game? Deck constructed standard, we can look back at it and we can see what we want the game to be as like players, but then also at the same time we can also like see what we hope it doesn't become as players and consumers, so it's just like it's like a time capsule. There's a bunch of knowledge there, and the knowledge is also like completely wrapped in fun. Okay, so this has been like entirely too long of a video to announce 2 tournaments. One of them that's not even real, but that's fine because here at Rival Stage Gaming, we like to take our time, do things the right way, which does not track with how I play Ymir, my locals, where I don't take my time and then I end up doom scrolling while I'm 0-1-1. But yeah, it's neither here nor there. And I hope you don't end up in my spot 0-1-1. September 20th at the Webcam Warriors Third Strike event, 10 a.m. Pacific Central Time. Standard format, webcam event. Ace Maneuvers Discord, $15, gets you 5 rounds of Swiss. Do well and you'll be there in the top cut. We're going to host this here live on Rival Stage Gaming. This will be my first time organizing a webcam event, the first event I've hosted in over a year. So I'm looking forward to it a lot. Special thank you to Stark Dark Open Series, Undefeated at Locals, Response on Play Podcast, and Final Round Gaming. This event, the one that was just there, this event is going to be fun. I cannot wait to see what everybody has cooked up. Anytime I get to say Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles in a serious manner when talking about something is a good time for me. That's kind of it. We have 2 tournaments here, 1 real, 1 fake. If you want more information about the fake one, please check the description down below. I'm going to have the list of the banned and erratas, what's legal, what's not legal. I'll try to make a living FAQ on there as well. But all the resources for that format will be down there. The links to Webcam Warriors Third Strike will be down there as well too. And as always, please remember to like and subscribe, and thank you all for watching.